I walked in to find my family on the sofa. My husband, my mother, my son, and my own sister. "What's going on?" I asked, fearing the worst. "Mom, sit down," my son said. "You need to accept the new reality. You're not in charge of this family anymore. Aunt Lana," he continued, gesturing to my sister. "Dad's happier with her now." I was furious. They all knew. I walked out of the room without another word. The next day, I had 118 missed calls. "Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with me today." Before I begin my story, I'd love to know what city you're watching from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me pull you into this story. The wind whipping off the tarmac at JFK that night was brutal, the kind of cold that seeps through your coat and settles in your bones. I'd just landed after 3 grueling days in Chicago, salvaging a deal my husband Gavin had nearly torpedoed with his arrogance. I was exhausted, my eyes burning from lack of sleep, and my shoulders aching from the weight of my laptop bag. All I wanted was a hot shower, a glass of Cabernet, and the comfort of my own home. I wanted to tell Gavin I'd fixed his mess, that Vantage Capital, the real estate empire we'd spent 22 years building, was safe for another quarter. I pulled into the driveway of our Greenwich, Connecticut mansion. The living room lights were blazing, a bright square against the dark, frost-covered lawn. That was strange. Usually, the house was quiet by 10 p.m. Gavin would be in his study, and our 21-year-old son, Matt, would be in his room, playing video games or online with friends. I opened the front door, dropping my keys into the bowl on the console table. The silence that met me wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. "Hello?" I called out, hanging up my coat. "Gavin? Matt? I'm home." "Eleanor, we're in the living room." My mother's voice called from the great room. My stomach clenched. My mother, Lorraine, lived 40 minutes away in Westchester. What was she doing here on a Tuesday night? A sudden panic seized me. Something had happened to my sister, Lana. Someone was sick. I rushed into the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. But it wasn't a medical emergency. It was a courtroom. They were all there, arranged on the designer leather sofa I'd picked out last Christmas. Gavin sat in the center, impeccably dressed in a crisp white shirt, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. To his left, my mother, Lorraine. Her posture was rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. To his right, Lana, my younger sister, and in the adjacent armchair, my son, Matt. The atmosphere was suffocating. No one was crying, no one looked sad. They looked resolved. "What is going on?" I asked, my voice breathy. "Is everyone okay?" I took a step forward, but Matt stood up. He didn't move to hug me. He stood like a guard blocking a doorway. He looked at me with eyes devoid of the warmth I had spent 2 decades nurturing. "Mom, sit down," Matt said. His voice was cold, a register lower than I remembered, stripped of all affection. "You need to listen, and you need to not make a scene." "A scene? Matt, you're scaring me." "What is this?" "You need to accept the new reality," he continued, reciting words that sounded rehearsed. "You're not in charge of this family anymore." I looked at Gavin. "Gavin, why are you being silent?" Gavin finally looked up. His handsome face, the face that had been the public image of our company for years, was twisted in a mask of pity mixed with annoyance. "It's over, Eleanor." "What's over? What are you talking about?" I felt like I was drowning on dry land. "Aunt Lana," Matt said, gesturing to my sister. "Dad's happier with her now. Unlike you, she understands him." The world stopped turning. I stared at Lana, my little sister, whose rent I'd paid for 6 years, whom I'd given a job when no one else would. She sat there, legs crossed, wearing a silk blouse that looked suspiciously like one that had gone missing from my closet, and then I saw it. Gavin's hand was resting on Lana's knee, casual, possessive. "We didn't want you to find out from strangers." My mother, Lorraine, chimed in. Her voice wasn't apologetic. It was a lecture. "We wanted to do this as a family." "Eleanor, you have to be realistic. You've been married to your job for years. Gavin is a man with needs. He needs a wife who's present, not a business partner who sleeps with her laptop." Mom, I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. You knew? You approve of this? I support happiness, Lorraine said, her chin jutting out defiantly. Lana and Gavin have a connection. They love each other, Eleanor. It wasn't something they planned. It just happened. You can't punish them for falling in love. It's makested. I looked at Lana. She gave me a small, triumphant smile. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked down at her hands. On her finger, sparkling under the recessed lighting, was a diamond ring. An Art Deco antique diamond, the one Gavin had given me for our 20th anniversary, the one that had mysteriously vanished from my jewelry box 6 months ago. I had torn the house apart looking for it, cried for days. Gavin had told me I was careless, that I'd probably lost it at the gym. That's my ring, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt hot in my throat. It looks better on her, Gavin said with a shrug. It was a waste on you. You never wear jewelry anyway. We want you to move out, Matt said, breaking the silence again. Dad's keeping the house. I'm staying here. It will be better if you leave. You create too much tension. My son, my baby boy, the one I'd nursed through fevers, the one whose Ivy League tuition I paid for by working 80-hour weeks, was kicking me out of the house I built. You're choosing this? I asked Matt, the tears finally stinging my eyes. You're choosing the woman who slept with your father behind my back? That's your aunt, Matt. She's not just my aunt anymore, Matt spat. She's the only one who actually listens to me. You just throw money at me and tell me to study. Dad and Lana, they treat me like an adult. I looked at the 4 of them. My husband, my sister, my mother, my son, the 4 pillars of my life, and every single one was rotten. They weren't just breaking my heart, they were dismantling my existence with a cruelty that took my breath away. I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I would not scream. I would not beg. I straightened my spine. I looked at Gavin, holding his gaze until he flinched and looked away. You think you've won? I said, my voice quiet but deadly. You think you can just rewrite history because you're bored and selfish? Don't make a scene, Eleanor, Lana said, her voice sickly sweet. Let's be mature about this divorce. Divorce? I let out a short, dry laugh. Oh, you have no idea what's coming. Don't threaten us, Gavin snapped, his arrogance returning. I've already spoken to the lawyers. You're boxed in. The prenup, the company bylaws, I've got it all covered. Get out that door, Eleanor. If you stay, I'll call security to have you removed from my property. Your property? I looked around the room. I had chosen every fixture in this house. I had paid for every brick. You're trespassing now, Matt said. It was the final severing. I looked at my son one last time, memorizing the face of the stranger he'd become. Fine, I said. I turned. I didn't take my coat from the hook. I didn't take my keys from the bowl. I had a spare set in my pocket. I walked to the door. Where are you going? Lorraine cried, a sudden note of alarm in her voice. Eleanor, we need to discuss the settlement. Gavin has a generous offer if you sign tonight. I didn't answer. I opened the heavy oak door and stepped out into the freezing Connecticut night. The wind hit my face, drying the tears before they could fall. I got into my car. The engine roared to life in the silence of the driveway. As I reversed, I saw them in the window. They were already pouring champagne. They were celebrating my removal. I drove into the darkness, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. The Eleanor they knew, the doormat, the provider, the fixer, had died in that living room, and the woman driving away was someone they should be very, very afraid of. If you're listening to this and you're as furious as I was in that moment, please hit the like button and type a 1 in the comments. Let me know you're with me. Your support tells me I'm not alone in this fight. Type that 1 now, because believe me, what they did next makes this betrayal feel like just the warm-up. I drove for an hour, the lights of the I-95 corridor blurring into red and gold streaks on my windshield. My mind was a chaotic storm of images. Lana's smirk, the ring on her finger, Matt's cold eyes. But underneath the shock, a primal instinct was kicking in. Survival. I needed gas. The low fuel light had been on since I left the airport, but I'd been too eager to get home to stop. Now, on a deserted stretch of highway, I pulled into a 24-hour gas station. My hands were shaking as I stepped out into the bitter cold. I inserted my platinum credit card, the one tied to our joint account, the one I used for everything from groceries to client dinners, into the terminal. Processing. The screen blinked, and then, in red letters, "Declined. See attendant." I frowned. That was impossible. The credit limit on that card was $300,000, and I'd paid the balance in full 3 days ago. I tried again. Declined. A cold knot formed in my stomach, heavier than the betrayal I'd just experienced. I dug through my purse and pulled out my personal debit card, the one linked to my checking account where my salary was deposited. I walked into the station's convenience store. The cashier, a bored teenager with headphones around his neck, didn't even look up as I placed a bottle of water and a pack of gum on the counter. I swiped the debit card. "No good," he mumbled, chewing his gum. "Try it again," I said, my voice tight. "There are funds in there." He sighed and ran the card once more. "Declined, ma'am. Insufficient funds or card is locked." "Got cash?" I stood there, paralyzed under the harsh fluorescent lights. My banking app. I had to check the app. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I logged in. Access denied. User authentication error. Please contact your branch. I tried the company account login. Access denied. I tried the joint savings account. Access denied. Gavin hadn't just kicked me out of the house. He had flipped the financial kill switch. He'd planned this. You can't instantly lock a co-owner out of business and personal accounts unless you've already laid the groundwork with the bank, falsely claiming fraud or changing administrative privileges days in advance. He wanted me penniless. He wanted me stranded in the middle of the night with no resources, so I would come crawling back and sign whatever generous offer Lorraine had mentioned. I dug through my purse, past the useless plastic, to the small zippered pocket at the bottom. I found 3 crumpled $20 bills and a handful of change, about $75. That was my current net worth. I paid for $10 of gas and the water with cash. I got back in the car, shivering now not just from the cold, but from the terrifying realization of my vulnerability. I couldn't go to a hotel. I had no credit card for a deposit. I couldn't go to my mother's. I couldn't go to Lana's. I drove until I found a roadside motel with a flickering neon sign that said, "Vacancy." It was the kind of place where truckers slept for a few hours, the kind of place where the sheets smelled of stale smoke and regret. "Cash up front," the night manager said through the reinforced glass. $80 for the night. I handed him 4 of my remaining 20s. He slid a key through the tray. Room 12. The room was freezing. The heater rattled and spit out air that smelled of burnt dust. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, still in my expensive business suit, my coat wrapped tightly around me. I looked at my phone. The screen was lit up with notifications. No apologies. No, please come back. 118 missed calls. Most were from a number I recognized. Gavin's personal lawyer, a shark named Arthur Pierce. And then the emails started pouring in. Subject, marital settlement agreement. Subject, urgent, NDA required. Subject, notice of termination, Vantage Capital. I opened the termination notice first. It was a PDF attached to an email from our head of HR, a woman I had hired, a woman I had mentored. "Dear Eleanor," it read, "effective immediately, your position as Chief Operating Officer has been terminated for cause, citing allegations of corporate espionage and gross negligence." I laughed. A harsh, ragged sound in the empty room. Espionage, negligence. I was the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. reviewing the ledgers. I was the one who knew every zoning law in the tri-state area. Gavin didn't even know how to convert a PDF without asking for my help. And then a text message came through. It was from Matt. My thumb hovered over the screen. A small, stupid part of me hoped he'd had a change of heart, that he was sorry. "Mom, don't make this hard. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition and trust fund if you fight the divorce. He promised me a VP position next year if I stick with him. You always taught me to be ambitious. I'm just doing what you taught me. Please understand." I dropped the phone on the bed as if it had burned me. That was the final piece. Gavin hadn't just taken my money and my job. He had used the wealth I helped create to bribe my own child against me. I curled up on the grimy bedspread, pulling my knees to my chest. The tears finally came, hot and fast. I cried for the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to. I cried for the sister I used to protect on the playground. I cried for the husband I had believed in when he was nothing but a smile in a cheap suit. But as the night wore on and the tears dried into salty crusts on my cheeks, something else began to settle in my chest. It was cold and heavy, like a stone. They thought they had erased me. They thought that by taking my credit cards and my passwords, they had taken my power. They had forgotten one thing. They'd forgotten who built the castle they were sitting in. They'd forgotten who designed the security systems, who drafted the contracts, and who knew where all the skeletons were buried. Gavin thought Vantage Capital ran on his charm. He was about to find out it ran on my brains. And while he may have stolen the keys to the front door, he forgot that the architect always leaves a back door. I stared at the water stain on the ceiling, waiting for the sun to rise. I wasn't Eleanor the wife anymore. I wasn't Eleanor the mother. I was Eleanor, the architect, and I was about to bring the whole damn house down. Sleep was impossible in that motel room. The drone of traffic from the highway was a constant hum, but it was the noise in my own head that kept me awake. Sharp, jagged memories replaying on a loop. To understand why I was lying on a filthy mattress with less than $50 to my name, I had to go back. I had to look at the foundations of my life and realize they'd been cracked from the start. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the older of 2 daughters. My father died when I was 7, leaving my mother, Lorraine, to raise us alone. His death broke something in her, or maybe it just revealed who she really was. She was a woman who needed to be adored, to be the center of attention, and she projected that need onto her daughters, or rather, onto one of them. Lana was born beautiful, even as a baby. She had golden curls and big blue eyes that made strangers stop on the street. I was plain, with brown hair, serious eyes, and a sturdy build. I was the responsible one. Lana was the princess. I remember the day I turned 18. I had just received my acceptance letter to NYU's Stern School of Business with a partial scholarship. It was my ticket out. I'd worked 3 jobs through high school tutoring, waitressing, shelving books at the library to save up for the rest of the tuition. I ran into the kitchen, waving the letter. "Mom, I got in." Lorraine was at the table, painting Lana's nails. Lana was 12 then, already demanding and petulant. "That's nice, Eleanor," my mother said, not looking up. "But keep your voice down. Lana has a headache." "But Mom, it's NYU. It's a business degree." Lorraine sighed, finally looking at me. Her eyes weren't filled with pride. They were calculating. "Eleanor, honey, we need to talk about that money you've saved up. My college fund." "Well, Lana's been scouted. There's a modeling competition in Miami next month. It could be her big break, but the entry fees, the travel, the portfolio, it's expensive." My heart sank. "Mom, that's my tuition money. I earned it." "You're so selfish, Eleanor," Lana chimed in, blowing on her wet nails. "Don't you want me to be famous? I'll buy you a car when I'm rich." "Eleanor," my mother said, her voice taking on that tone, the one that mixed guilt with command. "You're the strong one, the smart one. You'll always find a way. You can work for another year, take night classes. But Lana, she's fragile. This is her dream. You wouldn't want to destroy your sister's dream, would you? Families sacrifice for each other. I was dead. I gave them the money. Of course I did. I had been conditioned for 18 years to believe that my value lay entirely in what I could provide. I was the workhorse, the mule, the fixer. Lana was the golden child, the star, the one who deserved to shine. Lana went to Miami. She didn't get scouted. She spent the money on clothes and theme parks. I spent the next year working double shifts at a diner to earn the money back. I started college a year late, exhausted but determined. That dynamic never changed. It just evolved. When I graduated with honors, my mother didn't come to the ceremony because Lana was having a severe anxiety attack over a 2-week breakup. I walked across the stage alone. When I got my first big promotion at a financial consulting firm, my mother said, That's great, honey. Listen, can you lend Lana $1,000? Her landlord is being a total jerk. I paid Lana's rent. I paid for her car repairs. I paid for her acting classes that she never attended. I bought my mother a condo so she wouldn't have to worry about stairs. I thought I was buying their love. I thought if I just gave enough, worked enough, fixed enough, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Lana. I thought one day my mother would look me in the face and say, "I'm so proud of you, Eleanor. You're my joy." But I was never her joy. I was her utility bill. I was her safety net. And then I met Gavin. He was charming, ambitious, and he seemed to see me. He told me I was brilliant. He told me I was beautiful. I didn't realize then that he had the same calculating eyes as my mother. He didn't see a soulmate. He saw a resource. He saw a woman conditioned to give everything and ask for nothing in return. He fit perfectly into the hollow space in my heart that my mother and sister had carved out. I married him, thinking I was building a new family, a better one. Lying in that dark motel room, the revelation hit me with the force of a physical blow. I hadn't escaped my family dynamic by marrying Gavin. I had recreated it. Gavin was the golden child, demanding adoration and resources. I was still the workhorse, toiling in the shadows to keep the lights on. And Lana was just the inevitable conclusion. The two parasites in my life had finally found each other. "You're the strong one, Eleanor," my mother's voice echoed in my memory. Well, she was right about one thing. I was strong enough to carry them for 40 years. And now, God help them, I was strong enough to let go. I sat up in bed, the metal springs creaking. I wasn't going to cry anymore. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold, clinical clarity. They wanted fragile Lana. They wanted dreamer Gavin. Fine. They could have each other. But they could not have my money. They could not have my company. I reached for my laptop bag. It was time to stop being the sacrificial daughter. It was time to be the CEO who liquidates toxic assets. The morning sun sliced through the motel room's grimy curtains, casting long, dusty shadows on the floor. I opened my laptop. Thankfully, I had a portable Wi-Fi hotspot in my bag, a habit from years of business travel. Gavin couldn't shut down a device he didn't know existed. I didn't try to log into the bank accounts yet. I knew those doors were sealed tight. Instead, I opened a file labeled VCFA1. To understand how I was going to destroy Gavin, you have to understand how I built him. I met Gavin 22 years ago at a real estate networking event in Midtown Manhattan. He was 29, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, holding a glass of cheap wine, and holding court with a group of investors. He was electric. He had a smile that could sell snow to an Eskimo, a laugh that made you feel like the funniest person in the room. I was 25, a junior analyst at a major consulting firm, standing in the corner clutching my folder of market research. I watched him work the room. He was charismatic, yes, but I could hear what he was saying. He was dropping buzzwords, making promises of returns that were mathematically impossible. He cornered me by the buffet table. "You look like you're analyzing the structural integrity of the shrimp skewers," he joked. "No," I smiled. "I'm analyzing your pitch to those investors. You're promising a 15% return on a property in a declining neighborhood. You're going to make them lose money." He blinked in surprise, then laughed. "Okay, you got me. I'm a big picture guy, not a numbers person. I need someone who understands the boring stuff." "The boring stuff is what keeps you out of prison," I said dryly. He fell in love with me, or at least with what I could do for him right then and there. 6 months later, we were married, and a year after that, we founded Vantage Capital. The division of labor was set immediately. Gavin was the face. He was the CEO. He took the client meetings, played golf with developers, and gave interviews to the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. He loved the spotlight. He loved the title. I was the architect. I was the COO. But really, I was everything else. I sourced the properties, negotiated the loans, managed the contractors, battled with the city for zoning permits, and handled the taxes, payroll, and legal compliance. Our first big project was almost a disaster. Gavin had bought a derelict warehouse in South Brooklyn, convinced it was the next big loft conversion. He'd overpaid by $500,000. The contractor he hired ran off with the deposit. We were on the verge of bankruptcy before we'd even sold a single unit. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, pregnant with Matt, staring at the red numbers in the ledger. Gavin was pacing, sweating, panicking. "We're ruined, Eleanor. My reputation is destroyed. I'm going to be sued." "Sit down," I ordered. I took my grandmother's jewelry, the only inheritance I'd ever received, kept safe from my mother and Lana, and I sold it. I liquidated my 401. I renegotiated with the bank, presenting a business plan so detailed, so bulletproof, that the branch manager said it was the best he'd ever seen. I fired Gavin's friend, who was the project manager, and took over construction oversight myself, walking job sites in a hard hat with a 6-month baby bump. We finished the project. We sold out in 3 weeks. Gavin was hailed as a visionary in the business press. The headline read, "Gavin Sterling, the new king of lofts." He brought the magazine home, beaming. "Look at this, baby. We did it." He never mentioned me once in the interview. When I pointed it out gently, he kissed my forehead. "Sweetheart, you know how the media is. They like a simple story. Besides, you hate the spotlight. You're my secret weapon, the power behind the throne." I accepted it. I told myself it was for the family. I told myself that as long as the company thrived, it didn't matter whose face was on the cover. For 20 years, I was a fool. I built the stage, set the lights, and wrote the script. Gavin just walked out and took the applause. The company grew. We expanded into commercial properties, luxury condos, mixed-use developments. We were worth hundreds of millions. But the company's structure that was my masterpiece. Gavin was lazy with details. He hated reading contracts. He hated passwords. "You handle it, Eleanor," was his favorite phrase. So I set up the digital infrastructure. I created a complex web of LLCs to limit liability. I configured the automated bank transfers. And because Gavin was paranoid about employees stealing from him, he insisted on a localized, highly encrypted internal server for our most sensitive financial data. He wanted ghost access, a master admin login that could bypass all other protocols in case we were ever locked out or held hostage by the IT guys. "Only you and I will know the ghost access," he'd said. But Gavin never bothered to memorize the complex 64-character string I generated. He wrote it on a sticky note, kept it in his desk drawer for a week, and then threw it out, figuring I'd always be there to type it in for him. He was right. I was always there until last night. Now, in the motel room, I stared at the login screen for Vantage Capital's private server. The VPN tunnel was secure. Gavin thought that by calling the bank and removing me as a signatory, he'd cut me off. He thought that by firing me through HR, he'd revoked my access. He was relying on the standard protocols. He was relying on the front door. He forgot about the ghost access. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed the string of characters. It was a line from my favorite poem, mixed with the GPS coordinates of the first building we bought and the date Matt lost his first tooth. Things Gavin would never know. Authenticating. Access granted. Administrator level. The screen filled with data. The entire nervous system of Vantage Capital was open to me. Emails, bank transfers, accounting records, tax filings, private messages. I wasn't just looking at a company. I was looking at the crime scene of my marriage. I started downloading. I didn't want a few files. I wanted everything. Every email Gavin had sent for the past 5 years, every expense report, every wire transfer to Cyprus or Switzerland. And then I saw it, a folder labeled Project L. It wasn't a construction project. L stood for Lana. I opened the folder, and the blood ran cold in my veins. This wasn't just an affair. It was large-scale embezzlement. Dates, amounts, checks. January 12th. A $30,000 wire transfer to Lana Consulting, LLC. Lana's maiden name. February 14th. $70,000 to Tiffany & Co. March 1st. $25,000 for a monthly lease on a luxury suite at the Ritz-Carlton. He'd been keeping Lana as a mistress on the company dime for 3 years. But it went deeper. I saw transfers to a shell company I didn't recognize, Orion Holdings Group. The signatory on Orion wasn't Gavin, it was Lana. And the assets being transferred to Orion weren't just cash. They were deeds. Gavin had been slowly transferring the titles of our most valuable, debt-free properties into a company owned by my sister. He was gutting Vantage Capital, preparing to leave me with an empty shell, while he and Lana walked away with the prime assets. I felt sick. This wasn't just replacing me as a wife, this was grand larceny. But as I scanned the documents, a cold smile touched my lips. Gavin was an actor, not an architect. He didn't understand the paperwork he was signing. In his arrogance and in Lana's greed, they had made mistakes. Amateur, sloppy mistakes. They had forged my signature on the property transfer documents. I could see it in the PDFs, a clumsy digital copy and paste of my signature from another document. And on the articles of incorporation for Orion Holdings Group, Lana had listed her permanent address. It was my address, the house I paid for. I had them dead to rights. But I couldn't strike now. If I went to the police now, Gavin would claim it was an administrative error. He'd pay a fine and bury me in litigation for years. He had the money for expensive lawyers. I had $43. I didn't need them to hang themselves. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to think I was defeated, broke, and hiding in a hole. I closed the laptop. I had the blueprints for their destruction. Now, I just needed to build the trap. The digital evidence of Project L burned in my mind, forcing me to remember exactly how Lana had slithered her way into my sanctuary. It started 5 years ago, when Vantage Capital was thriving and my guard was down. Lana had just gone through her third divorce. Her ex-husband, a decent mechanic named Vinny, had left her because she refused to get a job and spent his salary on designer handbags she couldn't afford. She showed up on my doorstep with 2 suitcases and a tear-filled story that deserved an Oscar. "He was abusive, Eleanor," she sobbed, throwing herself into my arms. I later learned abusive meant he'd canceled her credit card. "I have nowhere to go. Mom said you'd help me." Lorraine called me 10 minutes later. "Eleanor, you have that huge house, all those empty guest rooms. Let your sister stay for a few weeks. She just needs to get back on her feet. Family helps family." I agreed. I always agreed. 1 week turned into 6 months. Lana spent her days by my pool, drinking my wine and criticizing my landscapers. Gavin, at the time, seemed annoyed by her presence. "She's a leech, Eleanor," he'd complain. "She treats our home like a hotel." I defended her. "She's hurting, Gavin. Give her time." Then came the ask. "I need a job," Lana announced one night at dinner. "I'm bored. I want to work for you guys." I nearly choked. "Lana, we run a commercial real estate firm. It's high pressure. What skills do you have for that?" "I'm a people person," she insisted. "I could be, I don't know, client relations. I can plan parties. I can talk to investors. You two are so serious. You need someone fun." "No," I said. It was one of the few times I put my foot down. But Lorraine intervened. She drove 40 minutes just to have coffee with me. "Eleanor, this is a chance for Lana to be responsible. If you don't give her a job, she'll just drift. Do you want her living on your couch forever? Give her a salary. Let her get her own place. Gavin thinks it's a good idea," she added smoothly. I blinked. "Gavin?" I talked to him. Lorraine said he thought Lana could help soften the company's image. "You know you can be a little intense, sweetie," I asked Gavin. "You want to hire Lana?" Gavin shrugged, adjusting his tie. "Your mother's right. We need someone to handle the social stuff, the galas, the charity events. You hate doing that. Let her do it. Pay her an assistant's salary. Get her out of the house. It's a win-win." So I did it. I created the position, Director of Special Events. At first it seemed to work. Lana moved into an apartment I subsidized and planned a corporate Christmas party. It was lavish, over budget, but a success. Then the subtle shifts began. Lana started coming to the office every day, dressed not in business attire, but in bodycon dresses that bordered on inappropriate. She would spend hours in Gavin's office, discussing event logistics. I'd walk by and hear them laughing. Whenever I entered the room, they'd fall silent. "What's so funny?" I'd ask, feeling a prickle of unease. "Just a client joke," Lana would say, smiling that sickly sweet smile. "You wouldn't get it, Eleanor. It's an inside thing." She started joining us for business lunches. Then she started replacing me at them. "Eleanor, you stay and finish the quarterly projections," Gavin would say. "Lana and I will take the developers to the steakhouse. You know you hate small talk." And I did hate small talk. I loved the work, so I let them go. I stayed in the office, eating a salad at my desk, crunching the numbers, making sure our profit margins were sound, while my husband and my sister were drinking martinis and laughing on my dime. I noticed the changes in Gavin. He started dressing younger. He bought a Porsche he didn't need. He started staying out late for networking. When I voiced my concern, Lorraine gaslit me into oblivion. "You're being paranoid, Eleanor," she scolded. "You should be happy Gavin and Lana get along. Most men hate their in-laws. It's a blessing. Don't ruin it with your jealousy. It's beneath you." Jealousy. She made me feel like I was the crazy, insecure harpy. Now, looking at the Project L folder on my laptop, I saw the reality. The networking dinners were dates. The business trips to Miami were vacations. And the consulting fees paid to Lana were, in fact, her allowance for being his mistress. The snake didn't just sneak into the grass. I had opened the door, invited it in, and given it a bowl of warm milk. And worst of all, my mother had held the door open. Lorraine had been the facilitator. She had pushed Lana at Gavin, knowing exactly what Lana was capable of. She wanted Lana to have the life I had built because, in her twisted mind, Lana deserved the kingdom, and I was just the builder, destined to construct it and walk away. I slammed my hand down on the cheap motel desk. The pain brought me back to reality. "Fine," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to play the fun, irresponsible game? Let's see how much fun it is when the architect removes a load-bearing wall." For the next 6 hours, I was in a fugue state of forensic accounting. The ghost access gave me everything, but I had to be careful. If I made any changes, if I altered a single file, the system logs might alert the IT director, a man named Stephen who had been loyal to me, but would now undoubtedly be taking orders from Gavin. So I became a ghost. I copied, downloaded, screenshot, and traced the flow of money. It was worse than I thought. Vantage Capital was hemorrhaging money to fund their lifestyle and the transfers to Orion, Lana's shell company. Gavin had stopped paying vendors. We were 3 months behind on payments to the construction crews for a new skyscraper in Hudson Yards. We were defaulting on the interest for 2 major loans. Gavin was robbing Peter to pay Lana. My company, my life's work, was a house of cards. If the creditors found out, we'd be insolvent in 30 days. But then I found something that made me sit bolt upright. It was an email chain between Gavin and a private investigator from something called the Orwell Detective Agency. The date was from 2 years ago. Subject: surveillance. Subject E: Sterling. Gavin: I need dirt. Anything. Infidelity, substance abuse, mental instability. I need grounds to invalidate the prenuptial agreement. Orwell: Mr. Sterling, we've tailed her for 6 months. She goes to work. She goes to the grocery store. She visits her mother. She works late. There's no dirt. The woman is a saint. Gavin: try harder or make something up. I can't afford to give her half. I stopped breathing. 2 years. He'd been planning to get rid of me for 2 years but couldn't find a way to do it without losing money. And then, a more recent email, dated 1 week ago. Gavin: forget the dirt. We're going with the mental breakdown angle. Her family will testify. Her mother and sister are on board. We'll claim she's overworked, paranoid, unfit to lead. We'll trigger a no-confidence vote at the board. Once she's out, we activate the buyout clause at the lowest possible valuation. Lorraine: I can testify that she's been acting erratically lately, very emotional. I'm worried about her. Gavin: we have to do what's best for the company. I stared at the screen, tears of rage blurring my vision. My mother, my own mother, had conspired to have me declared mentally incompetent so her golden child could steal my husband and my money. "You want unstable?" I muttered. "I'll give you unstable." I dug deeper. I needed leverage. The evidence of fraud was good, but it would take time to prove in court. I needed something immediate, something that would terrify Gavin. I found it in the tax filings. Last year, to secure a massive loan from a private equity fund, Gavin had inflated the occupancy rates of our commercial properties. He had fabricated lease agreements. He had physically forged the signatures of non-existent tenants. This wasn't just civil fraud. This was bank fraud, a federal crime, with jail time. And the loan documents were signed by Gavin Sterling, CEO. My signature wasn't on them. I had been away for my aunt's funeral that week, a funeral Lana had skipped, and Gavin had said he'd handle the paperwork himself. He had signed his own death warrant and didn't even know it. I copied the loan documents. I copied the fake leases. I compiled a dossier that was a nuclear bomb. I looked at the clock. It was 2 p.m. I had been working nonstop for 12 hours. I was starving, unwashed, and running on pure adrenaline. I needed a burner phone. I couldn't use my cell. They were probably tracking it or pulling the records. I walked to a 24-hour convenience store across the street, buying a cheap prepaid phone with cash. Back in the room, I sat on the bed and stared at the new phone. Who could I call? My friends? Most were mutual friends with Gavin. They'd probably side with the charming Gavin or stay neutral. My family? Obviously not. My employees? Too risky. I needed someone powerful, someone who hated Gavin, someone with the resources to fight a war. One name came to mind: Elias Thorne. Elias was a billionaire real estate magnate in New York. Old money, ruthless but principled. 3 years ago, Gavin had beaten Elias out for a prestigious development plot in Hudson Yards. Gavin won by bribing a city official to get the land rezoned, a move I had argued against vehemently, but one Gavin did behind my back. Elias had suspected foul play. He had publicly called Gavin an upstart in a cheap suit. Gavin had laughed it off, but Elias never forgot. If I went to Elias Thorne with proof of Gavin's fraud, especially the fraud that had cost Elias that deal, it was a risky move. Elias could just laugh in my face. He could throw me out. But he was the only person in New York with enough power to shield me from Gavin's legal team. I dialed the number for Thorne Industries. I knew it by heart. I'd looked it up enough times when we were competitors. Thorne Industries, chairman's office. A crisp voice answered. "I need to speak with Mr. Thorne immediately." "Mr. Thorne is in meetings. May I ask what this is regarding?" "Tell him it's Eleanor Sterling," I said. "Tell him I know how Gavin Sterling got the Hudson Yards zoning variance, and tell him I have the emails." There was a pause. "1 moment, please." 30 seconds later, a low, gravelly voice came on the line. "Mrs. Sterling, to what do I owe the pleasure? Has your husband sent you to gloat?" "My husband just fired me, emptied my bank accounts, and moved his mistress into my house," I said, my voice even. "I'm not here to gloat, Mr. Thorne. I'm here to burn him to the ground. I thought you might want to bring the marshmallows." Silence. Then a low chuckle. "I'm listening." Before meeting Elias Thorne, there was one more wound I had to cauterize. The file I'd been avoiding in the Vantage Capital database, Matt's trust fund. Matt was my weak spot, my Achilles heel. I had shielded him from Gavin's narcissism his entire life. When Gavin forgot Matt's birthday, I bought the gift and signed Gavin's name. When Gavin missed Matt's soccer games, I told Matt his father was working hard for our future. I'd raised him to believe his father was a hero, hiding the reality that his father was a neglectful egomaniac. Now I realized that was my greatest mistake. I had protected Matt from the truth, and in doing so, I had allowed Gavin to purchase his loyalty with lies. I opened the trust fund documents. Gavin had recently amended the terms. Originally, the fund was to be paid out at age 25, conditional on graduating from college. The new terms, dated 2 weeks ago: immediate access to a cash payout of $1 million, title transfer of a 2023 Porsche 911, and attached was the email chain. Matt. Dad, Mom's gonna freak if I drop out next semester. Gavin. Mom's not going to be in charge much longer, Maddie. She treats you like a kid. I treat you like a man. You want the car? You want the money? You just have to have my back when the time comes. You'll need to tell the lawyers Mom's been acting strange, that she's unstable. Matt. Well, she has been a little on edge lately. Gavin. Exactly. She's cracking up. We have to protect the company. If you stick with me, I'll make you VP of Acquisitions next year. No degree needed. You'll learn on the job just like I did. Matt. VP? Seriously? Okay, I'm in. What do I need to do? I read the words, and my heart didn't just break. It turned to dust. VP of Acquisitions. Matt was failing intro to economics. He spent his weekends playing video games and sleeping until noon. He wasn't qualified to run a lemonade stand, let alone a department in a multi-million-dollar company. Gavin was setting him up, stroking his ego to use him as a pawn against me. And Matt, my sweet boy, had sold his mother out for a Porsche and a title he didn't deserve. I remembered the text he'd sent me last night. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition. He wasn't worried about his education. He was worried about the easy money. I pulled up Matt's credit card statement, the one I paid. A high-end wine shop, a nightclub, an online casino site, a strip club. He was spiraling, and instead of parenting him, Gavin was funding the descent to buy himself an ally. I picked up my burner phone, hesitating. He was my son. But the boy who sat on that couch and told me to accept reality wasn't the boy I had raised. He was his father's creation. If I kept cushioning his fall, I would lose him forever to Gavin's world of corruption and shallowness. The only way to truly save him was to let him crash. I typed out a text message. I didn't send it yet. I just wrote it, staring at the blinking cursor. Matt, I saw the emails. I saw the car. You chose the easy way. But the easy way is a trap. When your father is done using you, he will throw you away just like he threw me away. I love you enough to let you learn this the hard way. Good luck, Mr. Vice President. I saved it as a draft. I wiped my tears. I went into the company payroll system. I removed Matt from the intern list he'd been on for 3 years, despite never once showing up at the office. I couldn't touch the trust fund. Gavin controlled that now. But I could touch the health insurance. Matt was on my premium corporate plan, a plan I paid for personally. Remove dependent, Matthew Sterling. Reason, no longer a full-time student. It was petty. It was small. But it was the first time in 21 years I hadn't fixed something for him. My phone buzzed. It was an address for the meeting with Elias Thorne, the New York Athletic Club, the library. 1 hour. Come alone. I closed the laptop, walked to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face. I tried to fix my hair. My suit was rumpled, but I shook it out. I applied a layer of lipstick, my armor. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back looked tired. Yes, but she looked dangerous. She looked like a mother who had lost her cub and had nothing left to lose. You want unstable, Gavin? I said to my reflection. I'll give you an earthquake. I walked into the New York Athletic Club in the same rumpled suit I'd fled my house in, carrying a laptop bag with enough evidence to send my husband to a federal prison. The doorman gave me a skeptical look. The place smelled of old money, old grudges, and mahogany, a world ruled by Elias Thorne. I found him in the library, sitting in a leather wingback chair, reading the Financial Times. He was 65, with a shock of white hair and eyes like polished flint. He didn't stand when I approached. Mrs. Sterling, Elias said, folding his paper. You look terrible. I feel terrible, I admitted, sinking into the chair opposite him, but my brain is working perfectly. You mentioned the Hudson Yards deal. Elias got straight to the point. You said you have proof. I opened my laptop. I wasted no time on pleasantries. I pulled up the dossier I'd built in the motel room. I turned the screen toward him. 3 years ago, Gavin beat you for the Hudson Yards plot. You suspected he bribed the city zoning commissioner, a man named Mark DeMott. You were right. Elias leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Here is the wire transfer, I said, pointing at the screen. $3 million to a shell corporation called DeMott Management. And here is the email chain between Gavin and DeMott, discussing the fee for the expedited zoning variance. Gavin was sloppy. He used his personal email for the initial contact. Elias studied the documents, his expression unreadable, but the air around him seemed to grow colder. "Why are you showing me this now? You were the COO. You benefited from this deal." "I didn't know," I said, my voice flat. Gavin kept a second set of books. "I found them last night after he threw me out of my house, froze my accounts, and put my sister in my bed." Elias looked up, a flicker of surprise on his face. "His sister?" "My sister," I corrected. "And my mother is cheering them on," I added, a bitter laugh escaping me. "It's a full-blown family reunion. I'm the only one not invited." I took a breath. "Mr. Thorne, I'm not here to gossip. I'm here to make a deal. Gavin is trying to destroy me. He's forged my signature on fraudulent loans. He's embezzling company funds. He's about to run Vantage Capital into the ground." "You want me to save it?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "I want you to help me bury it. And in return, I'll give you the Hudson Yards plot." "Go on." "Gavin is over-leveraged and cash poor. He's about to default on his construction loans. If you swoop in now as a white knight, offering a bridge loan to save the project, he'll take it. He's desperate. And in the loan agreement, we build in a guarantee clause. When he defaults, and he will, because I know the real numbers, you get the assets. Specifically, the title to the Hudson Yards plot." Elias looked at me for a long time. The silence stretched, thick and tense. Then a slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another. "You're a vindictive woman, aren't you?" Elias said softly. "I'm an effective one," I corrected. "Gavin thinks I'm a scorned wife who's going to cry in a corner. He doesn't realize I'm the one who wrote his business plan." Elias closed my laptop and slid it back to me. "I like you, Eleanor. You've got steel. I always thought Gavin was a peacock. Lots of feathers, but he can't fly. But you're a hawk." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my general counsel. He's the best litigation lawyer in New York. He'll represent you in the divorce, pro bono. Consider it an investment in our new partnership." "Thank you," I whispered, a wave of relief washing over me. "And Eleanor," Elias added, his eyes hard, "don't disappoint me. If we do this, we destroy him. Completely. No mercy." "He won't cry," I said, thinking of Gavin's smirk as he took my ring. "He'll scream." Elias nodded. "Good. Now let's get you a hotel suite that doesn't charge by the hour. You can't plan a war when you haven't slept." That night, I slept in a suite at the Ritz-Carlton, paid for by Thorne Industries. I took a long bath, washing the grime of the motel from my skin. Lying between crisp, cool sheets, I felt a profound shift inside me. For 20 years, I had been the fixer. I smoothed over Gavin's mistakes, cleaned up his messes, made him look good. I was the invisible glue holding everything together. Now, I was going to be the solvent. I was going to dissolve everything he thought was his. I picked up my burner phone and sent a one-word text to Elias. "Done." 3 days later, the trap was set. Elias's lawyer, a terrifyingly calm man named Vincent Porter, drafted the divorce settlement. It was a masterpiece of legal deception. On the surface, it looked like a complete surrender. The offer: Gavin keeps the family home. Gavin retains full ownership of Vantage Capital. Eleanor receives a one-time payout of $3 million, a fraction of what I was owed. Eleanor waives all claims to future alimony. It looked like I was giving up. It looked like I was broken, desperate for cash, and just wanted to escape. Gavin would love it. It played perfectly into his ego. But buried deep within the 60-page document, in Section 14, subsection B, Clause 4, was the poison pill. In the event that either party to this agreement is found to have engaged in undisclosed criminal activity, fraud, or embezzlement during the marriage, or is convicted of a felony within 24 months of signing, this agreement shall become null and void in its entirety. In such an event, All assets, including 100% of company shares and real property, shall revert to the non-offending party as punitive damages. Gavin never read the fine print. He paid lawyers to do that for him, but his lawyer, Arthur Pierce, was lazy. I knew because I used to pay his invoices. Arthur would scan contracts for the big numbers, the settlement amount, the alimony. He wouldn't be looking for a specific reversionary clause buried in boilerplate liability language. I met Gavin and his lawyer at Arthur's office. I wore no makeup. I was in an old sweater. I kept my head down, my eyes on the floor. I had to sell the image of a defeated woman. Gavin strode in like he owned the world, wearing a new Italian suit and smelling of expensive cologne, a gift from Lana, probably. "Well, look what crawled out of her hole," Gavin smirked, taking a seat. "Hope you're ready to sign, Eleanor. Lana and I have wedding invitations to order. Just give me the check," I said, my voice trembling. "I just want to be done, Gavin. I can't fight you anymore." Gavin laughed, looking at Arthur. "See? Told you she'd fold. She doesn't have the stomach for it." Arthur slid the papers across the table. "Standard settlement. Eleanor, you walk away with $3 million and a clean slate. Just sign here, here, and here." I took the pen, my hand shaking. Part act, part pure adrenaline. "What about Matt?" I asked quietly. "Matt stays with me," Gavin said, leaning back in his chair. "He's my VP now. We're going to build an empire together." I felt a sharp pain in my chest but swallowed it down. "Okay, take care of him. Just sign the damn papers, Eleanor." I signed my name on the line that seemingly signed away 20 years of my hard work. Then Gavin signed. He did it with a flourish. A big, arrogant G. "Done," Arthur said, closing the folder. "The check will be wired to your account tomorrow." Gavin stood and buttoned his jacket. He gave me a smirk that sent a chill down my spine. "You know, Eleanor, you should thank me. You were always too uptight for this life. Go live in a cottage somewhere. Find yourself a nice librarian." "Goodbye, Gavin," I whispered. As I walked to the elevator, I could hear Gavin laughing with Arthur. That was easier than I thought. She didn't even ask for the Hamptons house. The elevator doors closed, cutting off his laughter. I leaned against the metal wall and let out a slow, long breath. He'd signed. The poison pill was active. Now all I had to do was prove the fraud. And I already had the proof. I just needed the right stage to present it. And what better stage than a wedding? Gavin and Lana announced the date. It was 3 weeks away. A whirlwind wedding, they called it. They wanted to legitimize their relationship before the spring gala season. 3 weeks. That was my deadline. I left the building and got into Elias's waiting car. "Did he sign?" Elias asked from the back seat. "He signed," I said, a real smile finally breaking through. "He thinks he bought my silence for $3 million. He just signed away his entire life." Elias poured me a glass of sparkling water. "To the architect." "To the demolition," I replied. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in masochism. I had to remain invisible while Gavin and Lana paraded their victory all over New York. I rented a small, nondescript apartment in the city under my maiden name. I spent my days with Elias's forensic accountants, building the case. We were turning the raw data I'd stolen into a legal sledgehammer. Every night, I tortured myself by checking social media. Lana's Instagram was an eruption of opulence. A picture of a new Mercedes convertible. My hubby-to-be is spoiling me. Number blessed number new beginnings. A picture of my dining room, redecorated with tacky gold wallpaper. Out with the old, in with the glam. Finally making this house my own. Number home decor. It hurt to see her erasing my mark from the house I built, but the most painful posts were from my mother. Lorraine posted a photo of the 3 of them, Gavin, Lana, and herself, with champagne glasses at a tasting menu dinner. The caption, "Finally, a family that knows how to enjoy life. So proud of my beautiful daughter Lana and my wonderful son-in-law Gavin. Number true love always wins. True love." She had sold out her eldest daughter for a seat at the cool kids' table. And Matt? Matt was silent on social media, but I could see the credit card alerts on the secondary accounts I still monitored, the ones Gavin hadn't found yet. Aristocrat Wine Boutique, $2,500. Capital Nightclub, $5,000. NYPD, bail bond, $3,000. My son was in free fall. Gavin wasn't parenting him, he was enabling him. I wanted to rush in and save him, but Elias stopped me. You cannot save someone who does not want to be saved, Eleanor, Elias told me gently. He chose his side. Let him see what that side truly looks like when the lights go out. I knew he was right, but it felt like cutting off a limb. Meanwhile, the company was rotting from the inside. My spies, Sarah in accounting and Rick in project management, gave me daily reports. Gavin hasn't been in the office past 2 p.m. in weeks, Sarah texted. He let Lana plan a company rebrand. She wants to change the logo to pink and gold, for a commercial real estate firm. The contractors are threatening to walk off the Hudson Yards site, Rick reported. Gavin told them the check is in the mail. It's not. He used the construction funds to pay for the wedding venue. Let it burn, I told them. Just document everything. Save the email where he tells you to delay payments. The wedding was to be held at the Ritz-Carlton in the Grand Ballroom. It was the most expensive venue in the city. Lana had invited 300 people, investors, politicians, local celebrities. They wanted to cement their status as New York's new power couple. They needed an audience. Good, I thought, looking at the invitation Sarah had procured for me. You want a spectacle? I'll give you one. 2 days before the wedding, I received my final trump card. It came from an unexpected source. My phone rang. A blocked number. Hello? Eleanor? It's Vinny. Vinny, Lana's ex-husband, the mechanic she had bled dry. Vinny, I said, surprised. How are you? I'm okay. Look, I heard what happened. What they did to you, it's disgusting. I have something, Vinny said, his voice low. When Lana left me, she left a box of old papers in the garage. I was going to burn it, but I went through it last night. Eleanor, she had credit cards in your name from 3 years ago. Ones she opened when she was living with you. She was intercepting the mail. She maxed them out and then hid the statements. But I found the letters from the collection agencies, and I found a letter from Gavin. From Gavin? Yeah, he paid off one of the cards. The letter says, I covered this one, but you need to be more careful. If Eleanor sees this on her credit report, we're both finished. Stick to the plan. 2 more years, and we take everything. 2 more years. The timeline matched perfectly. Gavin had been conspiring with my sister to steal my identity and my money while I was feeding her and giving her a job. Vinny, I said, my voice thick. Can you get me that box? I'm already on my way, he said. When Vinny handed me that box, I felt the final lock click into place. This wasn't just fraud. This was a predatory conspiracy, calculated and evil. I looked at the handwritten letter from Gavin. 2 more years, and we take everything. I locked the letter in my safe. Thank you, Vinny, I said. Give him hell, Eleanor, he said with a grim smile. Oh, I plan to, I replied. I plan to give them a hell of a show. The day before the wedding, I did something dangerous. I went to see Matt. I knew I shouldn't. Elias had advised against it. But I was a mother first, a vengeful ex-wife second. I had to give him one last chance to get off the sinking ship. I waited outside his new penthouse, the one Gavin had bought with company funds. At 11 a.m., Matt stumbled out, looking hungover, wearing designer sunglasses and a sweatshirt that cost more than my first car. Matt, I called. His face hardened when he saw me. Mom? What are you doing here? Are you stalking me now? I'm not stalking you. I'm trying to save you. I don't need saving, he spat, heading for his Porsche. I'm doing great. Dad just put me in charge of the Southern Region portfolio. Matt, listen to me, I said, blocking his path. Your father is lying to you. The company is bankrupt. He's stealing money to pay for this lifestyle. He's using you as a shield. When the IRS comes, and they will come, your name is going to be on the documents. Matt laughed. It was a hollow, brittle sound. You're just jealous. You're jealous because Dad is winning, and you're a nobody. Are you living in some dump? Yeah, Dad told me. I'm living in reality, I said, my voice urgent. Matt, please don't go to the wedding tomorrow. Just say you're sick. Go to a friend's house. Just don't be standing next to him when it happens. When what happens? He challenged. Are you gonna crash it? Are you gonna make a scene? God, you're so pathetic, Mom. Dad said you'd try to ruin it. He called me pathetic. I felt a surge of anger but pushed it down. Matt, look at me. I raised you. I know you. This isn't who you are. You're kind. You're smart. You are not a thief. I'm not a thief, he yelled, his face turning red. I'm a businessman. Like Dad. Dad is a con man, I yelled back. And Lana is a parasite. And if you stay with them, you are going down with them. Matt stared at me. Then he pulled out his phone. I'm calling security. Get away from me. He got in his car and gunned the engine. As he peeled out of the parking spot, he rolled down the window and shouted, Don't come tomorrow, Mom. Nobody wants you there. You're the past. I watched him drive away, my heart breaking all over again. But this time, the break was cleaner. I had tried. I had offered him my hand. He had slapped it away. He was on his own now. I drove back to my apartment. Elias was waiting with the final arrangements. How did it go? He asked, though he could clearly read the answer on my face. He's lost, I said evenly, completely brainwashed. Then he will learn his lesson the hard way, Elias said. Are you ready for tomorrow? We have the access codes to the projector. The police have been briefed. Inspector Sullivan will be waiting in the lobby at 8 p.m. Yes. Elias handed me a garment bag. Then you'll need this. I unzipped it. Inside was a suit. It wasn't a dress for a crazed, desperate ex-wife. It was a sleek, custom-tailored black tuxedo, Yves Saint Laurent. Powerful, elegant, severe. Put on your armor, Eleanor, Elias said. Tomorrow you are not the victim. You are the executioner. I touched the fabric. It was cool and smooth. Thank you, Elias. Get some rest, he said. It's going to be a long night. I didn't rest. I sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. I thought of Gavin and Lana, probably rehearsing their vows right now, probably laughing about how they'd gotten away with it all. 2 more years, and we take everything. They wouldn't get 2 years. They wouldn't even get 2 days. Tomorrow, the new Mr. and Mrs. Sterling were in for a very different kind of reception. The morning of the wedding was gray and overcast, a perfect New York day for a funeral. I spent the morning reviewing the presentation. We had the timing down to the second. It would start just after the love story video montage that Lana had commissioned for $1 million. At 6 p.m., the guests began arriving at the Ritz-Carlton. I watched on a live feed from a camera Elias had installed in the ballroom. He owned a stake in the hotel, so access was easy. Everything was nauseatingly opulent. The room was dripping with crystal and pink roses, thousands of them. There was an ice sculpture of Gavin and Lana intertwined. I watched my mother, Lorraine, greet guests. She was wearing a champagne-colored dress, far too young for her. She was beaming as if she'd won the lottery. Isn't it wonderful? I could hear her saying to a bewildered cousin, They're soulmates. Eleanor? Oh, poor Eleanor couldn't handle Gavin's success. She's taking some time away. I saw Gavin. He looked nervous but triumphant, shaking hands, slapping backs, playing the part of the benevolent king. And Lana, she walked in wearing a custom Vera Wang gown, dripping with diamonds. Diamonds my company had paid for. She was stunning. I had to admit it, stunning and rotten to the core. The ceremony began. I listened as they exchanged their vows. I promise to be your partner in all things, Gavin said, looking deep into Lana's eyes. I promise to support your dreams and spend my life making you happy. I do, Lana cooed. I sat in my hotel room upstairs, sipping black coffee. Lies, I whispered. Every word is a lie. Are we ready? Elias asked, checking his watch. Signal is live, the tech confirmed. We can override the feed whenever you give the word. Not yet, I said. Wait for the toasts. Wait until everyone is seated and looking at the screens. The reception began. The champagne flowed. Gavin stood to give his speech. I want to thank you all for being here, he boomed, holding Lana's hand. It's been a long road to find true happiness. Sometimes you have to make hard choices to find your real destiny. The crowd applauded politely, though I could see a few uncomfortable glances. Everyone knew about the scandal. They just didn't care, as long as the bar was open and the liquor was top shelf. And to my new wife, Lana, Gavin continued, "You are my muse, my rock, my everything." My phone vibrated. It was the signal. "Now," I said. Downstairs in the ballroom, the lights dimmed for the video montage. Sappy music began to play. Photos of Gavin and Lana on yachts, in Paris, on a beach, flashed across the enormous screens behind the head table. The crowd oohed and awed. I stood up, smoothing the lapels of my tuxedo. I walked out of the room and headed for the elevator. "Showtime," Elias said, walking beside me. Inside the elevator, I watched the numbers descend. 10, 9. My heart wasn't hammering anymore. It was beating slow and heavy, like a war drum. The elevator doors opened on the lobby level. Inspector Sullivan and 2 uniformed officers were waiting. "Mrs. Sterling?" the inspector asked. "We have the warrant. We're ready when you are." The Saturday another savin. "Give me 5 minutes," I said. "I want them to see it before the cuffs go on." "Understood." I walked toward the ballroom doors. The security guards Gavin had hired to keep me out stepped forward. "Ma'am, this is a private event." Elias Thorne stepped out from behind me. "And I own the building. Step aside, or you'll be looking for a new job tomorrow." The guards hesitated, recognized Elias, and immediately backed away. I pushed open the double doors. Inside, the music had just reached its crescendo. On screen, the video showed Gavin and Lana kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower, and then the screen flickered. The music cut out with a screech of feedback. The room fell silent. On the massive screens, the romantic image vanished. In its place was a stark spreadsheet, red numbers and then a document, a credit card statement. Name, Lana Miller. Address, my address. Purchase, Tiffany & Co. Diamond ring, $100,000. Paid from Vantage Capital corporate account. A murmur went through the crowd. "What is this?" Lana stood up. "Gavin, fix this. Turn it off." "Turn it off!" Gavin screamed toward the sound booth. But the technician in the booth was ours. He didn't turn it off. He turned up the volume. And then my pre-recorded voice boomed through the speakers. "Hello, Gavin. Hello, Lana. You wanted a family reunion? You wanted everyone to witness your union? Well, let's show them what that union is really built on." Every head swiveled, not to the screen, but to the back of the room. The silence in the grand ballroom was absolute. 300 pairs of eyes turned in their seats to stare at me as I walked down the central aisle, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the marble floor. The black tuxedo made me look like a shadow against the sea of pink flowers. Gavin was frozen at the head table, all the color drained from his face. Lana was clutching a napkin to her chest, her mouth agape. My mother, Lorraine, looked as though she was about to have a stroke. "Eleanor," Gavin whispered, the microphone picking up his trembling voice. "What are you doing?" I didn't stop until I reached the center of the dance floor, directly in front of the head table. I looked up at them, the people who had been my world, now just small, frightened figures on a stage. "I'm here to make a toast," I said, my voice carrying clearly. I was holding a small remote. I clicked it. The screen behind them changed again. This time, it was the email chain between Gavin and the private investigator. "Gavin, try harder, or make something up. I can't afford to give her half." The crowd gasped. I could see investors, men Gavin respected, men he needed, leaning in and whispering furiously. "Shut it off!" Gavin screamed, scrambling toward the DJ booth. "Security, get her out of here!" "Sit down, Gavin!" Elias Thorne's voice boomed from the entrance. "Unless you want to add assault to your list of felonies." Gavin froze. He saw Elias. He saw the police waiting in the shadows by the exit. This is fake!" Lana shrieked, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "She's jealous. She hacked the system. She's crazy." "Crazy?" I clicked the remote again. A new document appeared. The fraudulent loan application for the Hudson Yards project, the one with the forged signature. Is forging a federal document crazy, Lana? I asked calmly. Is bank fraud crazy? Because that carries a mandatory minimum sentence. And guess whose name is on the shell companies receiving the stolen funds? I clicked again. Orion Holdings Group. Owner, Lana Miller. I pointed at her. You're not just the mistress. You're the mule. Gavin used you to launder $20 million. Did he tell you that? Did he tell you that when the IRS comes, they're coming for your signature? Lana looked at Gavin, her eyes wide with terror. Gavin? You said it was tax optimization. You said it was legal. Shut up, Lana, Gavin hissed. Oh, don't stop him, I said, smiling coldly. Let him explain. Let him explain to our mother what he really calls her. Click. An email appeared. Subject, the old bat. Gavin, just write Lorraine another check from the fund. The old bat is greedy. As long as we pay for her condo, she'll keep Eleanor in the dark. She'd sell out her own daughter for a kitchen renovation budget. Lorraine made a sound that was half sob, half choke. She stood up, her hands shaking so badly she knocked over her champagne flute. Gavin, you called me that after everything I did for you? I took your side. I betrayed my own daughter for you. And what did you get, Mom? I said, looking at her with pity. A seat at a wedding that's about to become a crime scene. Gavin looked around the room, his eyes wild. He could see his empire crumbling in real time. He could see the investors getting up to leave. He could see the waiters had stopped and were staring. He could see the end. You signed the settlement, he screamed, a desperate last cry. You signed it. You gave everything up. You can't touch the company. Section 14, I said simply. The poison pill. You commit a felony. The deal is void. And everything, the house, the company, the assets, it all comes back to me. Gavin's knees buckled. He collapsed back into his chair. And Matt, I said, my gaze shifting to my son, who was sitting at the end of the table, as pale as a ghost. Matt looked at me, terrified. He looked at the screen, which now displayed his own text messages. VP? Seriously? Okay, I'm in. You wanted to be a businessman, Matt? I said quietly. Well, here's your first lesson. Vet your partners carefully. I clicked the remote one last time. A video began to play. It was security footage from the company parking garage, showing Gavin arguing with Lana 2 days ago. Gavin on video. Once we get the Thorne money, we dump the kid. Matt is dead weight. We'll leave him with the tax debt and be in Monaco. He's too stupid to figure it out. A dead silence fell over the room. Matt slowly stood up. He looked at his father, the adoration in his eyes gone, replaced by a crushing understanding. Dad? Matt whispered. You were going to abandon me? Gavin stammered. Maddie, no, I was stressed. It's taken out of context. You called me stupid, Matt said, his voice cracking. You said I was dead weight. Matt, sit down, Gavin ordered, trying to regain control. Don't listen to her. Matt didn't sit down. He picked up his champagne glass and threw its contents in Gavin's face. I hate you, Matt screamed. I hate you. Chaos erupted. Lorraine was sobbing. Lana was hysterical. Gavin wiped the champagne from his face, looking like a drowned rat. I lowered the remote. The presentation was over. I nodded to Inspector Sullivan. The police entered the room, the guests parting like the Red Sea. Gavin Sterling, the inspector announced. You're under arrest for bank fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Lana Miller, you're under arrest for conspiracy and money laundering. No, Lana shrieked as an officer grabbed her wrist. I didn't know. I'm just his fiancée. He made me do it. You can tell it to the judge, the officer said, snapping the handcuffs on. Gavin didn't scream. He just stared at me. As the cuffs went on, his eyes met mine. You ruined everything, he spat. You vicious, vengeful witch. I walked closer to him. I stood so close I could smell his fear. I didn't ruin anything, Gavin, I said, my voice as quiet as a frozen lake. I just turned on the lights. You're just the cockroach that got caught. They were led away, the wedding guests standing in stunned silence. The only sound was Lorraine's weeping. I looked at the head table one last time. The cake was untouched. The flowers were perfect. The illusion was shattered. I turned to Elias Thorne. "I think I'm done here." "Brilliant," Elias said, offering me his arm. "Absolutely brilliant." As we walked out, I didn't look back at my weeping mother or my devastated son. Not yet. They had made their beds. Tonight, they would have to lie in them. The days after the wedding were a media circus. The New York Times ran a front-page story. Bitter vows. Real estate mogul arrested at the altar. I gave no interviews. I let the evidence speak for itself. I moved back into my house 3 days later. The police had removed the tape. It felt strange to walk back into the rooms I had designed. Lana's things were everywhere. Tacky clothes, trashy magazines, half-empty bottles of wine. I hired a cleaning service. "Throw it all out," I told them. "Anything that isn't mine. Burn the sheets, replace the mattresses." I wanted to scrub her DNA from my life. Gavin was denied bail. The judge deemed him a flight risk because of the Monaco video. He sat in a cell at Rikers, his Italian suits replaced by a prison jumpsuit. Lana made bail, posted by my mother, who had cashed in her retirement savings to get her baby girl out. But Lana wasn't free. She was facing 5 to 10 years. Her face was all over the internet as the gold digger who was now facing hard time. A week later, my mother came to see me. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were red. She stood on my porch, trembling. "Eleanor," her voice cracked. "Lorraine," I said, not using mom. "Can I come in?" "It's cold." "You can say what you need to say from there." She flinched. "Eleanor, please, be reasonable. Lana is terrified. She's just a girl. She didn't know what she was doing. Gavin manipulated her." "Lana is 40 years old," I said coldly. "She knew she was sleeping with my husband. She knew she was spending my money. She signed the papers." "She's your sister," Lorraine wailed, her grief turning to the familiar family poison. "You can't let her go to jail. You have to drop the charges. Tell the DA it was a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a felony." "If you do this," Lorraine hissed, "you are no daughter of mine. You are destroying this family." I laughed. It was a light, free laugh. "Lorraine, you destroyed this family 20 years ago when you decided Lana was the princess and I was the maid. You didn't come here to apologize. You came here to ask me to fix it again. You want me to be the fall guy one last time so Lana can walk free. She's fragile. She's a criminal. And you're an accomplice. I've seen the checks Gavin wrote to you. Consulting fees. You took money to help them manipulate me." Lorraine went pale. "I'm not going to press charges against you, Lorraine," I said. "Not because I love you, but because I don't want the shame of seeing my own mother's mugshot. But you are dead to me. Don't call me. Don't come here. If you need money, ask Lana." I paused. "Oh, wait, she's broke." I closed the door in her face. I watched on the security camera as she stayed there, banging on the door, screaming my name. Then her shoulders slumped. She walked away. It hurt. Of course, it hurt. But it was the pain of pulling out a splinter, sharp and then relief. Then there was Matt. He didn't call. He didn't come. I knew he was crashing on a friend's couch because the authorities had seized the penthouse and the Porsche. I waited. I knew he had to come to me, on his own terms. 2 weeks later, he appeared at my office. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. He was wearing old jeans and a t-shirt. No sunglasses, no swagger. "Mom?" he asked from the doorway. I looked up from my desk. "Hello, Matthew." He walked in and sat in the chair opposite me. He stared at his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was so stupid. He made me feel important. He told me it was better than college. He said you were holding me back, and you believed him because it was easier than doing the work," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "Yeah," he admitted, tears splashing onto his jeans. "I saw the video. He called me dead weight. He was going to abandon me. I have nothing, Mom." He wiped his eyes. "They took the car. I have no money. I need help." I looked at my son. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to write him a check and make it all okay. But I was the architect now, and you don't build a sound structure on a cracked foundation. "I love you, Matthew," I said, "but I am not giving you any money." He looked up, horrified. "But where will I live?" I don't know. You'll have to figure that out. Mom, please. Here is the deal, I said, sliding 2 pieces of paper across the desk. This is an application for a student loan. And this is a job application for the mailroom at Phoenix Group. Minimum wage. You start at the bottom. You finish your degree at night. The mailroom? He asked, stunned. Take it or leave it. If you want to be a man, Matt, you have to earn it. Gavin gave you things to buy you. I'm offering you nothing so that you can build yourself. He looked at the papers, looked at me, and saw the resolve in my eyes. Slowly he reached out and took the pen. Okay, he said, his voice shaky. I'll take the job. Good, I said. See Sarah in HR. She'll get you a badge. Don't be late. He stood up. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. You're actually kind of terrifying, Mom, he said, with a hint of admiration in his voice. I know. I smiled. Now get to work. The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. Gavin Sterling pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He got 8 years in a federal penitentiary, plus restitution. He looked gray and defeated in the courtroom. He never once looked at me. Lana took a plea deal. 3 years in a minimum security prison for fraud. She sobbed as the judge's gavel came down, looking at Lorraine in the gallery and screaming, "Mommy, do something!" But there was nothing Lorraine could do. Lorraine was living in a studio apartment on her Social Security, her allowance and her pride gone. I sat in the back row, wearing my black suit. I watched justice get served. I didn't feel joy. I felt peace. The scales were finally balanced. Epilogue. 1 year later. I was in my office, 40 floors up, overlooking the city. The sign on the wall behind me, Phoenix Group, was sleek, silver and blue, with no trace of pink. The company was thriving. We had just closed the Hudson Yards deal with Elias Thorne. It would be a mixed-use development with luxury condos, but also affordable housing and a community center. My phone buzzed. A text from Matt. Hey, Mom. Just aced my econ midterm. Think I got an A. Also, the mailroom team increased sorting efficiency by 15% this week. Do I get a raise? I smiled. Don't push it, but dinner's at 7, my treat. Matt was working hard. He was tired and broke and humble, and I had never been more proud of him. He was becoming the man I knew he could be, not the caricature his father had tried to mold. There was a knock on my door. Come in. Elias Thorne walked in with a bottle of champagne. Happy anniversary, he said, to the day you burned down the circus. It feels like a lifetime ago, I said, accepting a glass. You know, Elias said, leaning against my desk, Gavin sent me a letter from prison. He wants to know if I'll buy his shares in the old shell companies. He needs cigarette money. What did you tell him? I told him I only do business with the CEO, and the CEO is busy building an empire. We clinked glasses. I looked out at the city skyline. I had lost a husband. I had lost a sister. I had lost a mother. But I had found myself. I was no longer the fall guy. I was no longer the fixer. I was no longer the invisible wife. I was Eleanor Sterling, the architect, and my life, finally, was truly my own. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive it, but if my journey helps even one person stand up to the toxic people in their life, then it was worth it. Family isn't always blood. Family is the people who respect you, value you, and have your back when the storm comes. If you are holding on to someone just because they're family, but they are hurting you, let them go. You are strong enough to build something new. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut ties with a toxic family member? How did you find the strength? I read every comment and I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and never let anyone take the keys to your own castle. I am so glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'm so curious where all you wonderful people are watching from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will appear on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.